The internet is full of scary stories of all kinds, but there are always those that keep you up at night and drive you crazy. And today, you will see two of the most disturbing stories on the internet. But first, if you're new here, remember to subscribe to the channel. The channel's goal is to get 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I think we can achieve it, so please sign up. Now let's move on to the first story. My mind was never the same after that. I can't get up. I cannot move. I can't see. I can't get up. I can still feel it. I can still feel the deep sting of the blade he used to break my heart. I felt my leave my body, covering your hands in sticky redness. I felt his hands close around my waist as he pulled my useless body off the ground. I felt any remaining air abruptly leave my lungs as he threw me into my eternal grave. I can still hear. I can hear his hammer, rhythmically locking wooden planks into place, sealing me underground, little per little. I cannot see. I closed my eyes when the blade made impact, and now they are frozen, trapping me in the dark. I hope my mind disappears. May oblivion steal from me before my time. I wait and I wait. I should be now. I'm empty of... My heart took its last breath. I shouldn't be able to think. My body feels strange, cold, like ice. I want to shiver and hug myself to dig into the ground beneath me, but I can't move. Why am I not? It's only when I feel my muscles tightening against my bones, crystallizing, that I realize I am hours ago, but oblivion is lost on me. My mind remains on this mortal plane like fungus. Maybe it's anger. Maybe I can't accept that my time was taken from me, or maybe that's what it is. Maybe our minds are not our brains, but our souls. Our are nothing more than the prisons in which they are trapped. My mind races. Every inch of my fleshy prison screams in horror. I force my thoughts to retire. I wish they would cease to exist, anything to stop feeling withered and crumbling into nothing. Still, I remain. How long have I been screaming? Days, maybe. Time is nothing now. I hear a faint buzzing past my ear. A fly. It's the only sound I heard other than his footsteps above me. I'm happy for the company until I feel your legs running down my body. 1, 2, then more and more. I can't shake them off, and the tickling is I feel the writhing of little creatures embedded in my skin. They were depositing thousands of their relatives inside me. They burrow deeper inside me, feasting on my insides. I cling to my mind, the only thing I have. I block out the sickening sensation of my skin stretching and my stomach swelling and putrid gas filling my nose with an unholy stench. I want to vomit everything I've ever eaten, knowing that I'm the source. Memoirs. I cling to images from my past like a lifeline. I trace every detail of my mother's face until I can remember the intricacies of her features with perfect clarity. I burned her motherly gaze into my mind. I long for your comfort, as I remember my life like a movie playing on a projector behind my eyes. I replay images of my father, hands tinkling on the piano, Mozart, Bach, Elgar. He reads me fairy stories dramatically. He plays each character as if he had an of 100 instead of 1. There's liquid dripping from my nose, thick. It slides down my face, and I'm glad I didn't scream as I... Days now? Or months? I curse that I didn't pay attention to the science, otherwise I might have tracked my state of decay. My swollen skin is breaking down. It disintegrates into a covering useless. It slides off my body and hits the mud beneath me with a wet crunch. Swing is everywhere, corrupting everything. I read myself stories with happy endings and comforting lies. I hope to muffle the sound of flesh sliding and slapping against flesh. I chart my life, running it through my head again and again. I revel in how ordinary she was. Why was I unhappy? Why did I want more when what I had was perfect? Why did I want my time away if that was my destiny? The maggots are on my eyelids now. They nibble at my eyelids, and for a split second I see the floorboards above me. Little rays of light escape to my grave, and I want to cry at the beauty of the sight. Then the maggots invade my vision. I imagine tears streaming down my cheeks as they steal my eyes. Now it will be dark forever. What was the Shakespeare quote? They made worms out of me. I laugh internally as the fat worms gorge themselves on the rest of my... I feel smaller with each agonizing second, stretching into eternity. My feeling subsides as my body dries like a rough towel left in the scorching sun. I peel and disintegrate and am nothing but a shell. Nothing inside, nothing out. Necessary the woman, the time. Corrode him with my thoughts. I run for my life again, and the memories aren't enough, so I analyze it. I look at every possible angle. There is no conclusion or escape. There is no reason for that, no explanation for this mental prison. I will exist to watch us burn the world, and I do. I'm lying here. I hear the building collapsing around me, falling down, rebuilding, changing, falling down, rebuilding. I'm lying here. I feel the ground beneath me. It's dry where it should be wet. The house collapses. She's still down this time, and the Alpha Syndicate, the Shifting Sands, money talks. He always spoke. That's what brought me to the union, after all. I had just gotten out of the police. I was facing eviction. I was kind of wandering around aimlessly. I had applied for any job I could imagine a guy like me could get his hands on. Bank security, bodyguard for an ungrateful 20-year-old. Heck, I had even thought about getting my bail bondsman's license. Everyone was greeted with smug sighs and, "Sorry, we're not hiring. Try again later in the year." That's pretty easy to say when you're not worried about putting food on the table or whether you can pay the rent. I made the decision to do what anyone with little money would do in my situation and went to wash my sorrows at the local bar. I figured a few bottles of Feel Good could take my mind off the situation for at least a few hours. It was there in that little hole of a town, tucked against a tacky, worn-out bar, that I met Mr. Beck. Hard day? I looked around and saw that the place was practically except for one man. He wasn't just talking to nothing. "Easy to say, huh?" I said, draining the last few drops of my fourth beer. He laughed, a greasy, almost weasel-like laugh. "I can always tell a man is unlucky. This is how I make a living." He came over, sitting on the bench next to mine and extending his hand. "Wilson Beck, talent scout. Marcus Kent. I'm not interested in your pyramid scheme." Once again, I heard the same weasel laugh. "You misunderstand me, Mr. Kent. I'm not in that line of business." He reached into the lining of his suit and pulled out a nondescript black business card, sliding it across the bar to me. "Alpha Syndicate Consolidation Services." He spoke almost in a whisper. Flipping the front of the card over revealed the same black background with raised gold lettering. Its logo was simple, the Roman symbol for Alpha intertwined with the arched Omega symbol above. The card had no phone number or email. Heck, there wasn't even a website, just simple coordinates. One of my eyebrows rose in confusion as I looked back at the man. "Is this a joke?" I asked. He laughed coldly and shook his head. "It is not a joke, my good sir, but an interview. A chance at an exciting new world of employment and the opportunity to earn more money than you could ever spend." He made the classic gesture of rubbing his thumb against his fingers. "I understand. Any particular reason you're selling me this speech?" "I'm not a banker or stockbroker or whatever you do." A small smile lit up his face. "We have no use for bankers, brokers, or businessmen. What we need are men and women who aren't afraid to get their hands dirty. People who live to feel that adrenaline rush as they dive into the great unknown. An aptitude with doesn't hurt either, and judging by the hair and build, in a town full of farmers and fishermen, I'd bet you were a cop or recently separated from the army. Either way, it's a huge bonus with our hiring manager." My eyes widened. This guy was good, either that or just luck. I turned the card over in my hands and looked at it. I was desperate. He doubted that opportunity would present itself twice, no matter how dubious it seemed. What I need to do? Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. I had no idea what to expect on the long trail ride to the facility. The driver wound through the pines of the Tennessee desert, up a steep, almost vertical embankment. I was impressed with the view. Pine trees peeking above the thick fog as far as the eye could see. There was nothing man-made for miles around. No phone or power lines, no radio towers, or even security surveillance stations. Completely empty and untouched by man. "We're here, sir." The elegant driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror. I nodded and got out of the vehicle. Our final destination was a huge black complex complete with office windows and a revolving door, a testament to corporate America, set in the middle of nowhere. I began to wonder if I belonged here, but there seemed to be no turning back. Soon I heard the Jeep and the driver speeding down the mountain. I assumed there was nowhere to go now but inside. The guidance was confusing. Lots of medical assessments, assignment of standard equipment, and lots of PowerPoints on policies and standards. All this information, but I still didn't know what I was actually doing. These questions were answered shortly after lunch when I was taken to a small briefing room. In front of me were 5 people sitting. Everyone was decked out in the latest tactical gear, and everyone seemed less than thrilled to see me. "Doctor, what's wrong with the new guy?" A man with blonde hair pointed his thumb in my direction. His face was dirty and tanned except around his eyes. His baseball cap pulled back hid his disheveled mane. He's been disguising himself as the fifth man since we lost Garcia, said an older gentleman. His long gray hair tied into a ponytail gave a certain sense of professionalism, but his beard could have belonged to a standard mountain man. The blond man spoke again. So, first Garcia goes and taking us down like a guy. Now we have to take care of a young man who hasn't even been on the field? Yes, the old man replied. And you're either going to sit down and be quiet and deal with this, or you can stay here. I have no problem finding 2 replacements in one day. There was a moment of silence as the old man narrowed his eyes at the blonde. Suddenly, with a clearing of his throat, he stood up and faced me. Pleasure to meet you. Marcus, right? I nodded, trying not to slur my words. Yes, pleasure to meet you. I reached out my hand in an attempt to shake his, though he just looked at it and then back at me. It's good to have you, man. The name's Trevor, but feel free to call me Doc. I'm the resident doctor and squad leader here. Welcome to the whiskey team. He pointed to an empty chair and then to the other people in the room. This is Paige. He pointed to a slightly older woman with long dark hair and brown eyes. It was difficult to place its origins, but it gave off a slight Central American vibe. Chief engineer and second in command. If you need something and can't find me, go to her. She gave me a wave. Trevor jerked his thumb to the end of the table at a large black gentleman with thick glasses. That's Wade, expert heavy. It's good to meet you, man, Wade growled. Likewise, Trevor concluded with a heavy sigh. And this is Eric. He is the best in this place, Eric chimed in. A frown appeared on Trevor's face. Eric is our shooter and scout. You will be playing the role of spearhead in the unit. Appointment, but what do we actually do? I said, a little exasperated. A laugh erupted from the group. Well, that answers the question of what they tell new members. He grabbed a remote control and pointed it at a small television on the wall opposite mine. What we do is this. He clicked the remote. On the screen, I saw a recording of men attacking a building. They broke down the door, moving tactically, sweeping the hallways, examining every inch of the area. They walked at the same pace, their footsteps echoing down the hall, but that wasn't the only noise I could hear. A sickening sucking sound the air, sounds of chewing and gluttonous swallowing repeatedly. The men approached and I heard other sounds, the sounds of people screaming, begging against everything for something to stop, bones breaking like twigs, the gush of liquids being splashed against the walls. The men advanced even more silently than before and crowded into a slightly ajar door as they prepared to enter. The last thing I heard in the video was what sounded like a woman. She was crying, screaming uncontrollably, and from what I could discern, praying. Lord, forgive us, for we do not know what we do. A boot kicked the door open, all pointed in the same direction, and then I could see. The figure before me on the screen was something so distorted, so horrible, that I wouldn't have been able to dream it in my worst nightmare. It was sickly green, its body covered in gangrenous sacs filled with pus. Its legs were twisted and gnarled, longer than any creature I had ever seen. The arms felt broken and jagged as he grabbed a man, lifting him effortlessly into the air. The deep recesses leading to the creature's neck opened, revealing a large, gaping mouth filled with razor-sharp teeth. He devoured the man whole, chewing him up. The sickening sounds of bones breaking and crunching against skin mixed with his last agonizing breath as he was pushed into the creature's swollen belly. He turned to look at the men. Their black, soulless shells of eyes stared at the lifeless. With a crunch on the concrete floor, he burst at them. "Put it down," I heard a familiar voice say over the radio. Machine exploded. After a few seconds, the smoke cleared and the creature lay motionless, its body riddled with bullet holes. As the men moved closer to the room, they scanned the area. It appeared to be some kind of laboratory, complete with testing equipment and chemical stations. And viscera covered the room, as well as some were gutted, some were half-eaten organs scattered across the floor. "Protect the package and burn the body." The voice sounded again and the camera turned to see a woman. Her eyes were wide and trembling. The mascara that was once there was now running down her face. The person behind the camera grabbed her, causing her to let out a bone-chilling scream. "Secure package," a gruff British voice responded over the radio as the camera panned. 2 men covered the creature with kerosene and lit a match. "Your body. Roger, get ready to exfil." The men left the room as the video faded to black. I sat there in silence. Many thoughts came to my head. I would have asked if the footage was a hoax or something. Finally, the words came out as direct as they could be. "What the fuck was that?" I screamed. "Who were they? Was this real?" I was on my feet now, talking a mile a minute. "This can't be real. What the hell?" I stopped when I noticed everyone was smiling. I love this part. When they're all scared and nervous, it never gets old. Eric laughed and gave me a dismissive look. "Buckle up, sweetie, because it gets much worse than that." Trevor came over and put a hand on my shoulder. I could tell he was trying to handle this conversation with a little tact. "This," he began, "is what happens when a non-profit pharmaceutical organization uses herbs found in a Mayan tomb in hopes of synthesizing a to help cure sterility and injects it into a test subject. Needless to say, it wasn't very well received. We, as well as the government, were notified of the outbreak 72 hours before insertion. A senator's daughter was working there at the time. He paid for their safe extraction and elimination of the threat if possible. That's what you saw." He narrowed his eyes. "That's what we do, Marcus. We bite back the things that go bump in the night and make a cleaning up the mess of the paranormal and the occult. So you have a choice. Walk out that door now and forget everything you witnessed today. It's not like anyone will believe you, or," he tightened his grip on my shoulder, "stay and grow rich beyond your wildest dreams. Or option C," Eric chimed in. "Be mercenary for some cosmic horror and let us take your share." "Shut up, Eric," Trevor replied sternly. "So, what's it going to be?" A few hours later, I found myself sitting in a dimly lit briefing room. After agreeing to take the spot on the team, I was taken to the supply area and fitted with my new suit. In this case, cargo pants, a black long-sleeve shirt, a plate holder capable of better protecting my chest and back from any hostile boots, and a boonie hat. So I got my Beretta pistol and a short, tough M4. They wanted to provide me that seemed familiar to me based on previous experience. Trevor and Paige worked perfectly in sync, playing back and forth, loading them, and checking the sights. Wade grunted in the corner as he lifted a massive belt-fed monster onto his shoulders. Eric was holding his bolt like a father would hold a child as he gently lubricated the bolt carrier group. We were then led into a small classroom with a projector pointed at the board. Everyone took their seats, each at their own table. 5 minutes later, a small, stocky woman walked through the door. She wore a green pantsuit and expensive diamond earrings that tried and failed to distract from her bowl-style hairstyle. Apparently, there was no time for introductions as she picked up the projector's remote control and clicked it, revealing a rather tall man with short gray hair. His face looked aged and weathered, with glasses from a different era hanging from his broken nose. "This is Roger Anderson." The woman broke the silence in the room with a low, monotonous joke. "A well-known London archaeologist specializing in Egyptian dynasties." She clicked the remote again, displaying a satellite image of a desert with several red circles drawn around some entrances to what looked like caves. "Mr. Anderson has been on an expedition for the past few months in Wadi Hitan National Park, west of Fayum, trying to discern the meaning of the people's worship of the god known as Sobek. He sought to draw his knowledge from some of the few recently unearthed tombs throughout the area. Your expected arrival back in London was supposed to be on January 12th, 6 days ago." The woman paused. His estate seemed quite concerned as Mr. Anderson had never missed a before. Their first thought was to contact the Egyptian police to send a search party. That was until yesterday when we received this audio transmission. She clicked the remote. Hello." A male British accent came over the speaker. Short, hoarse breaths appeared in the audio. He looked breathless and manic. "Coin for found, world-destroying masterpiece. I can't sleep. Stay away!" His once calm voice turned wild. He screamed incoherently and spluttered before regaining his composure. "Please, help me. Find the V-Valley of the Nile." Then the audio stopped. The woman seemed unfazed. Naturally, this audio reached us. Mr. Anderson's estate paid the sum of $750,000 for him to return safely and turn over any items he appeared to have found. The planned departure from a private hangar at Nashville International Airport will occur in 3 hours. Pick up your briefings on the way out. She ended the presentation and left the room. Eric was the first to speak when the lights came on. "Well, it's good to see Susan in such a cheerful mood." Trevor let out a heavy sigh. He stood up and picked up a manila folder, leafing through the paperwork. "Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen the woman smile. Anyway, we have a job to do, so be happy with that, I guess." He looked in my direction. "Don't worry, man. Simple, snatch and steal. We go in, we get the guy and whatever which he shouldn't be messing with, and we took him back to the Queen. We'll be back home before you know it, and you'll be 100,000 richer." He said it in such a casual way that it seemed impossible to believe. "Sorry, did you say 100,000? Like $100,000? Well, technically 135,000, Paige chimed in. I looked over and saw her rolling some cigarettes for the trip. 750,000 minus the 10% the company takes, and then divided by 5 for the team. She looked up and smiled at me. "It's not the most lucrative job we've ever done, but it's a decent one to get you started, you know?" I stood there in shock for a moment. I never imagined that I could earn so much at once in my life. A folder slamming into my chest brought me out of my reverie as Trevor looked at me sternly. Focus. You got the job. Now make sure you stay alive to enjoy the pay. Read the report, familiarize yourself with what we're doing, and be ready to get to work as soon as we land. He looked around the room. Grab your things and go to the parking lot. We leave in 10 minutes. The journey to the airport was very peaceful. I sat in the front passenger seat listening to the local top 100 while flipping through the report. Anderson seemed like a normal guy. Eccentric perhaps, but nothing out of the ordinary. He made his fortune in the early 1990s, bringing back a treasure trove of ancient religious relics. His claim to fame, however, was his mummification theories. File after file dissecting his claim that certain rites were conducted not in an attempt to preserve the body for the afterlife, but to appease something that resided here on earth. He went on to argue that since the internal organs were removed, there was evidence that a ritualistic offering took place beneath certain temples, although he did not say for what reason. "It's good to see you studying," Trevor said. "Trying anyway. I hate to bump into something like you guys did in that video." "Oh, this? Boy, I'm not afraid of things that can be knocked down with enough lead. And the that comes back after emptying a comb that scares me." The car was quiet again for a while. Before I knew it, we had entered the asphalt and stopped. "Okay," Trevor said. "All aboard." The jet was pretty fancy. Dark windows and enough space for all of us to get some rest before landing, complete with a small kitchen and fridge for everything we needed. I honestly almost forgot what I was doing there as I leaned back in my chair on a makeshift bed and watched as we took off. The excitement must have exhausted me because I dozed off and didn't wake up until I felt the noise of the aircraft as we landed. The cabin lights came on as Trevor walked down the hallway, waking each of us up. He already had full tactical gear and his hanging on the chest. "Rise and shine, team. The early bird catches the worm and whatnot. Get your gear, clean up your trash, and get out. Local residents will meet us with trucks in about 30 minutes. I want to get into the desert before I start getting sunburned." Groans of protest echoed throughout the cabin, particularly with Eric, who managed to mumble 5 more minutes before being shaken by Trevor, who handed him his bags. I quickly cleared my area, picked up my and set off to see the landscape. Get out was all I could think as my eyes adjusted to the pink dawn sky. It looked like something out of a postcard. Old submerged buildings, the wind, the deep brown sand, and the massive dunes in the distance. This was an old place, sacred and peaceful. "First time in Egypt?" Paige poked my arm, shouting to speak above the turbines. "First time outside of Tennessee." I gave her a half smile. "I always wanted to leave, I just didn't go." She smiled widely and let out a little laugh. "Get used to it, newbie. Honestly, we rarely do work in the United States." She slung her bag over her shoulder and went downstairs. "This is weird. Imagine that with all the indigenous cemeteries and like Salem, we would have something there." She sucked it between her teeth and shuddered. "God, no, this is a Bruja thing, spirits and witchcraft. We deal with the more tangible side of the occult. It doesn't do us any good if we can't shoot something now, does it?" I nodded. Watching her pick up her backpack and throw it on the ground, I followed her lead, facing the soon-to-rise sun. "Question, where are we? I figured we'd be in Cairo or something, like a real airport. Why are we in the middle of nowhere?" I looked at her, catching her as she quickly closed a locket and slipped it under her vest. "Syndicate aircraft are flown by some of the best in the world," she continued. "The jets themselves are also designed for vertical takeoff and landing. Put it all together and it's usually routine to land closer to the location and then walk or drive from there. This saves us a few hours of mission time. It's just a shame they have height and weight limits." Wade's deep voice growled, suddenly beside me. He looked like a Rottweiler if he could talk, deep and dangerous. "I wasted my time getting a pilot's license only to be told I was too big for their seats." He threw his bag on the floor in the same way as Paige and in one fluid motion. Your machine shoulders, planting the on the ground, cracking the desert floor. I raised an eyebrow at his comment. I must have looked a little skeptical because he returned the same expression. "What? Were you a pilot?" "I don't know, you don't really seem like the type," he responded with a shrug. "I also went to seminary school." "You wouldn't believe that either, would you?" Half his face curved into a smile as he took a book out of his pocket. "And Wade is full of surprises, rookie." Eric came to his side, fighting a yawn. "Stick around long enough, he might even tell you where he's from." This got a round of laughs from the rest of the team, even Wade. I don't understand. What is so funny?" Wade shook his head. "Nothing, man, just an inside joke. You'll find out soon enough." "I hope so anyway," Eric interrupted, placing a hand-rolled cigarette between his lips. I caught Paige rolling her eyes. "You're going to be fine, newbie. Just remember the golden rule. Always trust." "Stop chatting." Trevor's voice came from behind us. It wasn't quite a shout, but it commanded the same respect. We all turned to look at him as he pointed east. "They are here." The locals who dropped off the trucks were friendly enough. They seemed a little nervous, just very nervous and constantly looking around. Honestly, their body language was the only thing about them that stood out. They wore white ponchos falling to their waists with matching white pants tied around their shins, some black leather sandals tied on her legs. The only things that looked strange were the black bandanas they wore with the gold Union symbol stenciled on the fabric under their left eye. Well, that and the .45S strapped to his hips. They never spoke, not once. They just waved to Trevor, who returned the gesture. 2 trucks, 2 sets of keys. Trevor and Eric took the lead while I drove with Paige, Wade behind the wheel. As soon as the doors closed, Wade reached out from the driver's seat and opened the glove compartment. Inside were 3 black pieces of plastic, each shaped like a small crescent moon. He handed me one before tossing the second to Paige and pushing the plastic over her ear, securing it in place. "Communication channel, let's keep in touch, put it on." I looked at the plastic, very modest. Upon plugging it in, however, I heard the audio crackle, vibrating against my ear. Trevor's voice came soon after. "Okay, this is Whiskey 1. Give me a comms check. Let me know if everything is working." "Whiskey 2 online," Paige replied matter-of-factly. "Whiskey 3 ready," Wade growled. "Why do you need me to say something? I'm right here." The sound of a slap came, followed by Eric's cry of pain. "Ow! Damn, man, Whiskey 4 is filing an HR complaint." "Whiskey 5 online," I said, stifling a laugh. "Roger, we are about 80 kilometers from the site. We'll be there in less than an hour." With that, I heard the audio crackle one last time before disappearing as we drove into the dunes. While Wade was busy driving one of the trucks up a steep sand embankment, and Paige rested her head against the window, I took the time to check all my gear once again. Syndicate definitely made sure we had the best of the line with everything we needed. Nothing was repurposed or secondhand. It still smelled new again. It was hard not to feel excited to use the thousands of dollars worth of equipment strapped to my body or clutched in my hands. Almost enough to make me forget that I might be by some Frankenstein's monster by the end of the night. This, I thought. I laid my head back against the rest, watching the dunes rise and fall as the trucks hit the sand. This is a problem for my future. The sharp jolt of skidding brakes made my eyes snap open. It took me a moment to get my bearings. The trip was only supposed to take an hour. When did it get so dark? It was only when I looked out the other window that I realized the sun was still shining, high and... The difference was that my window looked out onto the mouth of a huge cave. It would have easily swallowed a good-sized shopping mall, flanked on the sides by 2 enormous sandstone pillars, the interior lit by a flock of torches. I was beginning to understand the scope of this hell we were about to enter. I muttered as I stepped out of the truck, my foot gently crunching the compacted desert floor. "Who are you telling?" Wade approached, his eyes still glued to the cave. "Doctor, I hope you have a map of the interior," he screamed. Trevor was leaning against his truck, finishing a cigarette. He nodded, shaking off the embers and walking over. I radioed to ask for an escort inside. "They are leaving now, but they seem pretty skittish. I didn't think protecting a nervous little Brit would be so difficult, but apparently they can't wait to get out of here. Something about nightmares, I think. My Arabic is pretty rusty, so they might just need to take a piss." We all laughed and continued looking around, studying the entrance. I had to turn around to get a good look at its entirety. Something about this seemed strange. I can't really explain it, but it felt like it shouldn't be here. The more I looked, the more I felt wrong about it. It gave me goosebumps, as if it wasn't a cave we were entering, but the mouth of a monster. I stiffened when I felt a hand squeeze my shoulder. "Easy, it's just me," Trevor said. He pulled out another cigarette, lighting it in one quick motion, and took a drag. "Just checking to make sure you're not having second thoughts." I smiled and gestured to my own cigarette. He complied and offered a lighter. I took a drag, letting the cool smoke hit my lungs. "Not yet, but I'll let you know when I do." He nodded and faced the mouth of the cave. "Dude, I'll tell you, you definitely got lucky on your first trade." "Oh yes, why that?" "I remember my first job. Running through the Appalachians, hunting skinwalkers, tripping over trees, and falling into stagnant lakes in the middle of the night. There's nothing better than bright and sunny." "I thought we didn't do jobs in the States," I said, raising an eyebrow. "Oh, we used to. It seems most bandits don't like being hunted in their own backyard, so they've migrated elsewhere. So we really haven't seen much in the last 15 years. I almost dropped the cigarette in shock. "You do all these jobs and you're still working after more than a decade?" 2 decades. Trevor exhaled smoke through his nose, looking at me out of the corner of his eye. "Is there a problem with that?" "In truth, no. Just why not retire?" "I'll stop when they do," he replied. He jutted his chin to point at the man hurrying out of the cave. Time to go to work. Despite Trevor's previous claims that he was rusty in the guard's native language, he managed to converse with him quite well. The guard was a short man in the same clothes as the ones who left the trucks, although this guy was nowhere near as composed as the other two. He ran up to us, grabbing Trevor and excitedly telling him something. Physically, he looked rough, to say the least. His face was oily and covered in sweat, his beard broken into twists. His eyes, however, looked like the ones you'd see in a photo of someone coming back from Second Worldwide, as if he had aged years in such a short time. He squinted through his already swollen eyes so I could barely see the glassy whites. Whatever had happened to him, he was worse for it. "Okay," Trevor said, turning to us. "Aten here will take us back to Mr. Anderson. Once there, we will extract him and his co-worker. Anderson will remain in our care until we land in the United Kingdom. Then we will hand over the lunatic, thank him for the money, and return to the United States. Ready to go?" He paused, scanning our faces. We nodded. "Good, watch your step inside, even if we have a lighted path. I'm sure there must be places to get lost along the way. Eric, you'll be back there providing security and picking up any stragglers you see. Wade will be there in the back as well to provide support. Paige with me. Marcus," he looked at me, "you will be on point with Aten. Time to shine, kid. Try not to lose us." Whatever we thought of the cave on the outside was eclipsed by how deep it was inside. We must have walked for nearly an hour, squeezing through narrow, damp fissures, crawling through holes that no one could even remotely call stable, and holding on for dear life as we tiptoed along narrow ledges, praying we wouldn't fall into the ground. Darkness below. It was only when my feet touched solid ground and we moved into the next chamber, however, that I wished I could turn back. We stood on a plateau, overlooking what could only be described as a huge underground sea. It was quiet, but I could still hear that settling sound that lakes make when there's nothing around to drown it out. I couldn't even see the walls surrounding the cliff we were on, except the one behind me. I had to hold on to it to steady myself and not get dizzy. Then I felt something, this irresistible urge to look back, and I turned my attention to the wall. It was carved with ancient symbols and hieroglyphs. They started out insignificant. A single line here, a symbol or two there. However, as we approached the far wall where the torches were gathered, the symbols seemed to open up and flood the landscape. Heck, there was even writing on the ceiling, all indecipherable and strange, but they seemed to originate from one source, the open stone mouth of a giant crocodile. The statue towered over us. At nearly 30 feet tall, you could impale someone with the giant hooks of your teeth. Beneath its gaping mouth was a huge stone table, once ornate and mysterious. This was not something you would find in a history book. This place was not hidden by people at that time. He had been banned, left to rot so no one would have to bear to see it. I felt the familiar touch of Trevor's hand on my shoulder, which made me jump. "Game on," he whispered in my ear. "Don't let anyone, least of all the customer, know how scared you are. You are the heavy artillery here. Mercenaries are not afraid of the dark-haired boy. Take a deep breath, clench your teeth and get your bearings. Wait for the guys and meet us upstairs. You're doing well." I nodded as he looked at me, his eyes steely. He returned the gesture and then looked at Paige. They moved, scanning the area with each step. It wasn't long, perhaps 20 minutes, when Wade's hulking mass stomped into the dim torchlight. Eric stood behind, his thin body looking even thinner compared to the larger man. "How's it going, newbie? Have you pissed yet?" Eric smiled as he hung up his on the shoulders. "I'm happy to disappoint. What took you so long?" "Sandstorm," Wade said, looking around, taking it all in completely. "I had to cover the trucks. I don't know how long it will last, but it looks bad." "Murphy's Law, right?" Eric's smile seemed a little more genuine as he slapped my chest firmly. "Come on, let's join the others." Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. To say that Roger Anderson was a little more unhinged since we heard the recording at the compound would be an understatement. The once stoic and proud Brit in the photos was now an unhinged nutcase covered in dirt, cracked glasses, greasy hair hanging down to his shoulders, and more worried about the taste of rocks than the 5 new people standing around him. "Well, look on the bright side," Eric said, looking around the man. The floor was covered in old books, chocolate bar wrappers, and what I hoped was mud. They just said to bring him back alive. Alive! The old man jumped up. He grabbed Eric by the vest, shaking him vigorously. He was pretty strong for a crazy old man. "A life. Many lives, your life, all just mere puppets in a show put on by the gods, this beast forever despised as the villain." He blinked rapidly, as if trying to think of the next line of his sermon. "Who are you again?" "Your rescue group," Eric said, pushing him back to his side. in this. And that better not be what I think it is, he yelled, wiping a brown stain off his shirt. Oh yeah, exactly, my saviors. Who exactly are you going to rescue me from? Mr. Anderson. Trevor stepped, kneeling beside him. We are from the Alpha Syndicate. You can call me Trevor. My team and I were hired by his estate to bring him back safe and sound. Safe at least, Eric muttered. Trevor returned a shut-up look. As I was saying, we were also told to bring a relic of some kind of currency. Oh yes, the currency. The sacred lens of the god of the Nile, the jewel of Fayum. Idiots, the bunch at my job, but they're right. Indeed, Trevor said, stepping back as the archaeologist quickly jumped to his feet. May I ask what is so special about this piece? To ask? To ask? Roger crossed to Trevor in 2 quick steps. I heard the sound of a safety lock being changed and looked to see Paige lifting her from the darkness. The pipe of pointed at Anderson. My good man, I would be insulted if you didn't. He laughed heartily and placed a hand on Trevor's shoulder. Please come, this way. I breathed an audible sigh of relief when the safety lock again, and the pipe disappeared into the darkness. This, Anderson said as we piled up around a torch under the huge stone monster. It is the coin of Sobek. He opened his hand to reveal a small, circular glass disc, half filled with a deep purple liquid. But that's not a coin, I muttered to Paige, who shushed me. Sobek was a god, you see. They say he was born from these same lands. He was a god of creation, the lord of waters, and a defender of balance, allying himself with both the forces of order and chaos. Or so the story goes. He tightened his hands around the piece. He was worshipped for centuries. They even mummified sea crocodiles with the pharaohs in hopes of protecting them in the afterlife. It's all very well, sir, Trevor said, looking at him carefully. But what does that have to do with this place? Ah, but that's exactly what I said, right? We all looked at each other, confused. At least I said that, right? Am I not thinking about what I'm saying or saying what I'm thinking again? It's much easier to do the latter, don't you think? Sir, Trevor said a little louder. Where? We are. The man stayed there for another second. He touched his fingertips, muttering to himself. Roger! I don't know! Anderson shouted back. Their voices reverberated off the walls of the stone tomb. He sighed and placed a hand on his head, rubbing his temples with his index finger and thumb. I don't know. He returned to the table, piling up his books. Not a word about this temple anywhere in history. This place isn't even on a map. He was simply discovered by a hiker, taking a walk through the park. We slowly approached in silence as he continued to explain. The only thing I can figure out is the history of the coin. Now it's time to find her. He seemed a little frantic as he flipped through the dusty tomes, finally stopping on a page written in ancient Egyptian. The text was translated on a post-it on the next page. Wade reached over and took the book, reading it aloud to the rest of us. And rejoice, he who drinks the dark waters. Your cup will fill and be filled forever and ever. Take to task your prayers to the son of Neith. Allow your will to flow through your like the Nile of the ancient kingdom. Rejoice, dear brothers, in the union of your mortal flesh with that of the Lord of waters. Rejoice in your dark sea. Allow your path from the underworld to join your path to dreams. Rejoice, dear brothers, and answer our call to brotherhood. Heed the call of the god of the dark river. So the coin is filled with an endless supply of fresh water? Paige asked skeptically. Either that or lizard steroids, Eric interjected. Both great ideas, Anderson said in a much calmer tone. As far as I can guess, this place was a secret temple to Sobek. As for why here, well, as you heard, they believed this was the entrance to their world, the underworld to be exact. That would explain the whole dark god part, I said. I held my a little firmer. No matter what it is, Trevor said, snapping me out of my thoughts, I don't want to spend any more time in this place than I have to. Get your sir, and hold the relic tight. We are leaving. Yeah, about that, boss, Eric said. I hate being the bearer of bad news, but we can't go anywhere until the storm outside passes. It almost took me and the big guy away. Of course there is a storm. Okay, new plan. Let's go back to the entrance. We will inspect the scene and make our decision on what to do next. Oh, if you need guidance, I can be a great guide to the mouth of the cave. Let me find my glasses, please. Sir, they're in your face, Paige said exasperatedly. Oh, yes, I understand. Anderson took glasses and rubbed the stains. Boy, you're on point. Get us out of here. Trevor rubbed his temples. With a nod, I began the task. The way back was a little more manageable the second time. I didn't mind the journey so much as long as it got me out of there. I heard the storm before I saw it. The strong wind coming off the dunes sounded like I was behind a plane getting ready to take off. I felt the sand scrape against my teeth and sting my nose as much as I felt that familiar crunch beneath my feet. Furthermore, the torchlight was almost completely swallowed by that dull, dark brown hue. How lucky for me. Good. Looks like we're going to be here a little longer than expected, Trevor exclaimed, seeing the thick wall of swirling sand that surrounded our exit. I told you, boss, Eric said, defeated. There's nothing we can do but let it go. I think so, Wade. Get your camping gear. Let's get through this as comfortably as possible. Ready? Wade's voice echoed from the background as he placed his backpack on the floor and began rummaging through it. He took the contents: 2 tents, an electric stove, a small mess kit with a pot, and 10 cans of soup. Check your bag, kid. Headquarters should have issued a field kit in case of emergency situations like these. Inside, I found a mess kit similar to Wade's, filled with canned stew, a small first aid kit, some extra ammo, a sleeping bag, and some flares. Soon we had a beautiful structure. We used rocks as makeshift chairs while Trevor made us a pot of soup. All the creature comforts, except for heat, water, and not being trapped in a creepy abandoned temple. We'll work in shifts, Trevor said after finishing his bowl. 4 hours of work until morning. The storm shouldn't last more than a few hours, but it will at least give you a break. Plus, with the sun obscured by the sand, you can get some sleep if we need to move at night. I know we haven't seen anything unusual yet. Well, abnormal for us at least. However, I need you all at the top of the The fact that we didn't see anything is more disturbing than usual. Are you forgetting the giant stone lizard and the infinite ocean covered in darkness and evil? Said Eric, taking a second helping. It's not evil in itself. When you think about it, what is modern religion if not successful sea cults? True, but I don't think I'm going to a scary cave for a Baptist revival, Eric retorted, giving Trevor a very discreet eye roll. We all tried to hold back our laughter before Trevor cleared his throat. Congratulations, Eric. You made the first shift. Paige will be second, followed by me, the boy, and Wade will be our morning bird. It works for me, I said, devouring the rest of the food. I better go to bed. Trevor nodded. We all should. Try to rest as much as you can. We'll be out of here faster than you can say Cairo. Cairo! Eric shouted. Speak more slowly, Paige shouted back. Mr. Anderson, feel free to try resting with us if it makes you feel better. We'll wake you up if we need to, otherwise we'll see you in the morning. As you said, my dear, I hope that together dreams won't be such a big problem. Right, you and your group were having trouble sleeping. I almost forgot. The same dream every time. I saw myself swimming, a pool of black water with no land in sight. Suddenly, powerful jaws appeared and devoured me, tearing and tearing my body, dragging me down from the depths. The last thing I saw before I woke up were 2 red eyes the size of houses staring at me. Well, Paige said, sounding a little uneasy, it looks like a lovely image to look at before bed. In fact, perhaps the further away I am, the less severe the severity will be. I hope so, sir, said Trevor. He crawled to an empty spot on the floor, pulling his backpack behind his head to use as a pillow. I'd hate for you to go from drowsy to unconscious, but if you have an episode and put my team in danger, I won't think twice about helping you get back to sleep. Yes, of course, Anderson said. Again, he made the gesture of touching his fingertips and looking at the floor while placing his back against the wall next to me. The man looked like a child who broke a window and was waiting for punishment. I felt a little bad for the guy. It wasn't long before he and the rest of the team were out. I'm not sure when I finally fell asleep. With the ground hard and the wind always blowing, it seemed like it would never go. Somehow I managed. I must have slept lighter than I thought, since when I woke up it was apparently for no reason. I sat up, rubbing my eyes to adjust to the darkness. The storm must have finally stopped because I could feel myself thinking again. There was no more strong wind or sand particles hitting my face. Something else had replaced it. A low hum crept up my spine and settled behind my eardrums, like when you stop hearing something loud. It was an itch that I couldn't scratch, no matter how much I tugged at my ears. I think it got louder, to be honest. My eyes finally adjusted, moving to the torchlight that illuminated our small camp. Trevor was sitting on a rock with his back to me. He was stiff and nervous. Boy, don't make noise, don't panic, and listen to me very carefully. With those words, my body went on high alert. My hand tensed around my wrist. The buzzing seemed to increase a little. All ambient sounds disappeared, so I could barely hear Trevor's voice. Something is not right. I want you to go slowly, very slowly, to the mouth of the cave. Look outside and tell me what you see. Whether it was the comfort of knowing Trevor was there or pure muscle memory, my legs worked. I carefully tiptoed to the mouth. Continuing my way, I noticed something else. All the torches were out. Not just the ones that were in the mouth during the storm, but everywhere, even going back inside. The only lighting came from Trevor's lighter and the light from outside. Wait a second. Where was the fucking moon? Where were the stars? There was nothing there. I don't mean it was so cloudy that the moon was blocked out. I mean there was nothing. Just a deep purple background that seemed to move. It vibrated and writhed, casting a wet glow on the sand in front of us. The sand. the ever-increasing expanse of dunes that seemed to have no end, sand, rocks, and dust, but no trucks, no tarps, no trash. Hell, there weren't even any footprints or tracks in any direction. And the sand wasn't brown, it was pitch black, as if God had grated coal from the heavens, a huge ocean of black as far as the eye could see. "I don't think we're in Egypt anymore, kid," Trevor said a few feet behind me. It was difficult to hear him. It was difficult to hear anything. The buzzing grew loud enough to make my knees shake. I kept my balance and tried to concentrate. I don't know. I can't even remember when the storm stopped. It was there when I got it from Paige, and then it just stopped, like that. He snapped his fingers. I lost the meaning. I thought I might miss my dinner. I didn't know what to say. I could feel myself starting to hyperventilate. "Calm down, kid. We are not where we were, but we are alive. I woke up the team. Let's make a plan." His voice was... The ringing wouldn't let me hear it. It penetrated my brain, and I could feel my skull vibrate. I fell to my knees, holding my head in my hands, and screamed. Even though I couldn't hear it, I felt my mouth twitching, my jaw clicking, and my vocal cords trembling. Eventually, I heard something else. It wasn't the environment. It wasn't Trevor or the others shaking me, their mouths screaming but silent. It was something deep and primordial, guttural and angry, a voice that traveled from the earth itself to my body, where I felt it grab my soul and work my mouth as if I were a puppet. I heard it in my mind while others heard it from me. "Give back!" My body shook. The air left me. I felt violated and exhausted, but at least the touching had stopped. I looked at them. The looks on their faces wavered between fear and concern, settling on Trevor's solemn grimace. "Boy, Marcus, can you hear me?" I looked at him and nodded. "Get up," he said, reaching out and pulling me up. I felt a hand on my back and looked to see Paige, still looking at me with concern. She had the eyes of a mother, someone who didn't want to see you hurt, that he wanted to bear the weight of his pain. I hadn't seen this side of her before. Trevor's voice brought us back to the situation. "Look, guys, I don't know what's going on. I don't know who turned off the lights or who decided to play ventriloquist with the boy. All I know is that we're here, and whether it's a ghost or a god throwing a hissy fit, we have to figure out a way to get out of the fucking Dodge. Now look alive, we don't know what's out there." One number sounded, the sound that comes from a high power. Eric was kneeling and shooting in the sand. "I think I have a good idea, boss," he screamed. We all turned to see what he was talking about. The sand was moving. The black crystals flew away like a boat's wake. Something was swimming underneath, something huge, and it was heading straight for us. "Make a zone of..." "Eric, keep splashing the waves, lead your..." "Paige, Marcus, find cover and alternate bursts. Wade, break the tripod and cycle the pig. Let's go." We all jumped into action. "Oh," by Eric again as he aimed. The barrel of Wade's machine gun glowed as he held the trigger, his tracers lighting up the night. It was so disorienting, everything was happening so fast, but Paige grabbed me and threw me against a nearby wall. She shot a gust of shots while Trevor mirrored us from the other side. But the thing kept coming. It was approaching us, strafing from side to side, almost surfing the dunes. It was fast. Paige and I took alternating bursts, but if the amount of we were throwing at him didn't slow him down, what would we do when he decided to jump? "Paige, now!" Trevor shouted. Paige stepped and opened the bottom of the carrying a grenade. With the pull of the trigger, the grenade flew out the sand in front of us. "Please kill him," I thought. I prayed to God. To anyone with the power to listen, please kill this damn thing. My heart sank more than I thought it could as the creature charged straight ahead, extinguishing the flames in its wake. It was almost here, and it was getting faster. The sounds of a they stopped, echoing amid the hail of lead. Eric stood up and quickly backed away, trying to pull out his comb. "Trevor, I'm dry, I have to," was all he could say. Then a great black mouth full of gigantic teeth opened beneath him and tore him in two. The beast dove out of the sand and stood on its hind legs. It was as tall as a bus and twice as wide. His body was covered in a deep black that gave off an unnatural glow, his red eyes widening with joy. A giant black crocodile. Its gaping mouth attacked Eric again, scattering pieces of bone and entrails across the cave floor. His arm still dangled from the beast's tooth. I heard Wade scream, turning his to the crocodile and shooting again. In one swift movement, the creature lowered itself and reached the man in the blink of an eye. The shooting stopped as he grabbed Wade with his huge hands and grabbed Wade from both sides. Then he pulled. Wade popped like a cork. His intestines spilled out of him onto the floor as he screamed. The scream of immeasurable pain mixed with fear and the truth of certain. Its screams were muffled as the creature spoke, projecting its voice to all of us. "Return what you stole!" With a strong blow, the beast threw Wade's body against the wall, staining him with... More! Have more! Paige screamed. The entire desert, this ocean of darkness, the sands of hell were churning. More tracks came, more creatures coming us. I heard the scream of the only person I couldn't bear to hear. I looked to see that the creature had grabbed Trevor and was hanging him upside down, lowering him to its throat. Trevor was screaming. He emptied his clip into the creature. However, nothing seemed to work. She was unfazed, as if she were shooting him with a spitball. "Trev!" Paige screamed as she ran to save him. It was too late. The creature's jaws came down again, crushing Trevor's head like a grape. She stopped screaming. She stopped running. She turned around. She looked at me with the same motherly eyes, now full of tears. Then a second beast slammed into her, turning her body into a pink mist. They were everybody were Trevor, Eric, Wade, Paige. I leaned against the wall. I couldn't do anything but stand there and watch as my team turned into a grinder. Another beast landed in front of me, falling behind as it towered above me. I don't want to die like this. Like them. I grabbed my pistol. I lifted it and pointed it at my head. I heard the voice again. "Return the waters of the river god." I woke up with a scream, awake. No, not in heaven, still in this brown hole in the earth. This brown, brightly lit hole with a sandstorm raging outside. Had this all been a dream? I looked around and my suspicions were confirmed as everyone was still outside, but they were intact and breathing. They also seemed to be having the worst dreams of their lives. Everyone was twitching and spasming, their eyes moving rapidly under their lids. I saw Eric knocked out against the wall. We must not have made it out of the first round. I didn't care. I knew what I needed to do. I braced myself as I opened my backpack and grabbed my flares. Anderson was just a few feet away. Ironically, he was the only one who seemed to be sleeping soundly, rumbling like a sawmill with the coin lying clearly on its chest, its once dark waters now glowing a reddish-red color. Deep, I took the coin. I picked it up and ran back inside. The torches here were still lit, so I didn't need to use the flares yet. I quickly found myself on the ramp leading to the sanctuary, where the other torches remained lit. The room itself turned off whatever light was there when we left. I lit one of my flares and ran to the table. The second I walked in, I felt watched. A million eyes all watching me, all watching with joy as I ran and stood on the table. I must have almost tripped twice trying to get there. My hand gripped the coin as I snatched it from my pocket and placed it back into the stone crocodile's mouth. But it wasn't stone. It didn't look like stone. It felt hot and wet. I felt a tongue curl up and gently lift the coin from my fingertips. I heard that voice chill my veins again, not in my head but in my ear, right next to me. "Good boy." My flare went out. I stumbled and crawled away, trying to find my way in the dark. That's when I heard the laugh, the deep, guttural, sickening laughter of a hellish mob erupting from the sea below, seeping through the walls and burying itself in my brain. I didn't think as I grabbed another flare, got up and ran for the exit, trying not to shit myself. I tried not to pay attention to the shadows on the walls. Every time I looked at them, they smiled a toothy Cheshire smile. "Wake up!" I screamed at the top of my lungs. I didn't hear the howling wind anymore. I didn't taste the sand. Arriving at the entrance, I saw that the storm had passed and the sky was clear, the normal sky. I screamed again as Trevor's body pointing a pistol around. "What is it, boy? What is happening?" he said with half-closed eyes. "Look, I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but where is it?" Anderson screams at me. "Where's the sea coin?" He was looking everywhere, opening packs and tearing open pockets. Trevor looked at me with a raised eyebrow. "Boy, what did you do?" "I just saved our skins. Now can we leave, please?" Not without the sea coin. You ingrate." Anderson was in my face now, his cheeks flushed with anger as he poked my chest. "I spent half my life chasing a find like that. No mercenary is gonna..." He couldn't finish. My fist hit his jaw and hit his snooze. "Marcus, what the hell is going on?" I heard Paige behind me. "Yeah, rookie, what the fuck?" Eric said with a yawn. I grabbed my hair and pulled, letting out a cry of frustration. Halfway there, I felt Trevor grab my wrist. Not hard, but enough to tell me to look at him. His eyes met mine and he understood. With a wave, he turned around. "Get the team together. Let's get out of here. The storm is past. The journey home should be smooth." All protests stopped at once. Everyone looked at me, then at each other. They quickly started packing. Within minutes, we were speeding away from the cave on our way back to civilization. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. "Then that's it?" James Silva, the head of Syndicate HR, sat across from me, scribbling his notes on a piece of yellow office paper. He was a tall, middle-aged guy. Her once black hair, now streaked with silver, was slicked back with a of pomade, and I'm sure every other product under the sun. The shiny blue suit and shiny gold Rolex completed his used car salesman outfit. "Yes, sir, that's it." We got transport, we boarded for London and landed here 3 days ago. We had been given a few days to rest after returning. I got a call a few hours before saying I needed to go in for a performance review. Before I knew it, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up in front of my building, and I was strongly encouraged to take a ride. Thank you, Mr. Kent. Sir, may I ask why I am here? Of course you can, Mr. Kent. Silva smiled broadly and placed his newspaper on the table, leaning to give me his full attention. 50% of a job well done is 100% failure in management's opinion. We don't have time for half-baked contracts in our line of work. Now, since you're new to the company, certain failures are understandable, so don't worry, you still have a job with us. He paused briefly, as if to make sure I fully understood what he was saying. 50%? I scoffed. We got Anderson out of there safely. Yes, you did, Mr. Kent, but you also just admitted to returning the coin, the other half of the work. But he waved his hand and smiled, a cool corporate way to say, shut up. While management is frustrated, we understand that certain setbacks will happen during a training period. This in addition to your performance evaluation by your supervisor, who viewed you in a more, shall we say, favorable light. My supervisor? That's me, kid. Trevor's voice came from behind me as the door opened, bringing some natural light into this dirty fluorescent hole. Did you break up with him, Silva? I have a briefing in 5. Silva looked through all his notes again. Everything here is in order. I will update contract number 26043 accordingly. He turned to me. You are free to go, Mr. Kent. We left in a hurry, walking quickly through the corridors and cubicles. I looked over to see Trevor light up a cigarette as we passed the last row of office drones to the door at the back of the complex. Thanks, man. For what, boy? He blew out a cloud of smoke and turned to look at me. Good. For saving my in-this with that report. He laughed and shook his head. Boy, you saved all our lives' butts in Egypt, those dreams. What I saw, what we all saw. I wouldn't have woken up. It's the least I can do. You trusted my judgment. I couldn't help but smile. Paige didn't tell you? Rule of thumb, kid. Always trust your team. These guys, he pointed to the compound. They find people like us, people who have no one. Loners, vagrants, runaways, you get the idea. They put a in our hands and use us to profit. What family do we have in the world if not those by our side when hits the fan? I know you trust me. I know everyone on the team trusts me. I also need to trust all of you. I nodded as my smile widened. Now, he said, before taking a long drag and smoking the cigarette down to the filter. Put your game face on, kid. Time to go to work.